Hey guys, this is AJ Galante, former president of the Danbury Trashers, and you're listening to my man Sean, the Sheriff Podcast.
Welcome, everybody, to an exclusive episode of The Sheriff. Guys, today I have a gentleman that I've actually admired for a very, very long time. Now, ladies and gentlemen, some of the biggest characters on The Sheriff podcast have had incredible journeys. My guest today proves that to be incredibly accurate. From getting drafted from a prestigious prep school in Lake Placid to making the all-rookie team his first year pro in the NHL, my guest today, ladies and gentlemen, would go on to play nearly 800 NHL games, including 753 games for the Philly Flyers, which makes him the all-time leader in games played for defensemen, ladies and gentlemen. My guest today was also an Olympic medalist, is an Olympic medalist. He is the voice of the Philadelphia Flyers, and my partner on the upcoming pay-per-view event, Ice Wars International, which is taking place in Inuk, Alberta, at the Cree River Casino. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, my new buddy, Chris Therien, a.k.a. Bundy. How are you doing today, my
Sean
friend?
McMorrow, I'm just going to go with Sheriff the whole way, bud. You are Sheriff from now till the end of time for me, and we're going to leave it like that. That's maybe the best and most humbling intro that I've ever had, because most of the stuff you said probably wasn't really all that true, but we're going to keep it like that. We're going to let everyone believe it is. I appreciate the intro, buddy, and I know we got a few things we're going to go over here, but I'm really looking forward to discussing international ice wars. You and me will be working with AJ Galante, of course, who had that amazing Netflix story, right, going back into the fall. So many little different things. I know we'll pop through as we have about a little over a month before it comes, but I'm excited for some time here with you, Sheriff, and let's get right down to it, my man. It's your show. Take it away.
Awesome. Well, you know what, Chris? Like, since we are talking AJ, since we are talking Ice Wars, let's just get right into that off the bat, my man. Now, dude, I'm just super excited, Chris. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I think it was about 2 weeks ago. I'm going through my scrolling and my social media, and boom, I see another Ice Wars post. So I'm like, oh, awesome. Okay, what's happening now, right? Because it's been really exciting.
Yeah.
Chris Therien, welcome to the team. Welcome to the broadcasting team, Chris Therien. I'm like, no way, they got him? Like, bro, I was so ecstatic when I saw that your name was added to the list. So I'll add to this. So I get on the phone with Charlie, and I'm like, Charlie, because we had talked about a month ago about me being on the broadcast team as well. I'm like, Charlie, I was still hoping that I was going to be on the team, and I saw that you guys just signed Chris Therien. I can't wait to work with this guy. And he's like, buddy, you're a part of it too. Let's get down to business. So, I mean, the last couple of weeks for me, my life has been extra exciting because of this announcement, my friend.
You know what? And I'm happy for you too. And listen, you've earned it, my friend. As I say to the guys, I was more of a spectator of the great fights that I've seen over the years than a participant, but I always say, it's interesting too, Sheriff, when you look at the guys I played with over the years, and it goes for any team. The most popular guys on every single hockey team were the enforcers and the character guys, right? And that doesn't change. The game has changed a lot right now in the way it's presented, I think, to the public. But there was once an era where that stuff was so meaningful, and those guys were the most adored figures in the locker room. That wasn't by accident, right? They carried character. You can't just come in and do that job and not have a lot of character and charisma and ability. Some of my best friends now in the world were the greatest fighters, like Craig Berube. I mean, it's a guy I talk to every 2 days. I mean, he's one of the chief. I mean, he's one of the most decorated guys in history. It's not just his fighting that I've seen. It's guys like yourselves that lend that character to the league that really, I think, shaped what hockey was over time. And I think in a lot of ways, it's what maybe has pushed hockey down a rung on the totem pole because of the lack of that intensity, a lack of fighting that happens at the time. I'm not saying the game's changed, and we want to make sure that players' health it becomes prevalent. But there's just something about NHL and something about hockey in general where you still get the fan base still comes up and like, I miss sitting on a powder keg. You didn't go to a game to see a fight, but you went to a game to see a hockey game. But if the game maybe wasn't good, you were sitting on that powder keg, and that's something I think that kept people coming back all the time that you don't necessarily see today.
Well, 100%, Chris. And that's why, in my opinion, I think that Ice Wars International as an event is really going to help the game of hockey, because this is what we're seeing, Chris. Yes, the game has gone in a different direction.
Yeah.
But the last couple of years, we've been seeing a little bit of spark happening, I believe. Teams are realizing when they got, a Ryan Reeves, a Wayne Simmons, when they have someone like that in the lineup, that they do a lot better in playoffs because these guys can still play a regular shift. So
yes, and Simmer, you mentioned Simmer. Wayne Simmons, when I broadcast, I never played against him. We didn't cross generations, but he was the best for me. First of all, as a broadcaster and a guy on TV, most of us are not trained professionals. So I always had Simmer in my back pocket. He was always there to help me, to give me a quote at the end of a period. But man, was he tough. You still see it now. He gave Zach McEwen a pretty good beating a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
And there's a rematch tonight up in Toronto. But again, those guys like that, just unbelievable how they still, and you know what, when there's a brawl or something still goes on, it's still the talk of TV the next day, regardless of what people want to think or believe. Fighting still is prevalent. You're filling up MMA arenas. This is an interesting concept though, right? Because it's 2 1-minute rounds, which people are like, well, that's not a lot, really. Well, I know one thing. I probably had fights that lasted 30 seconds before that seemed like they were 9 minutes. And the guys that do fight for a minute feels like they've probably been fighting for 20 minutes. Your hands are, they're aching after from the grabbing on the jerseys. And maybe not you guys as much, but the guys that only had 3 or 4 fights a year, you knew every one you got into. So it's going to be interesting, really to see how guys are, because there's a great prize money for it. I like the fact that they're using some of the gloves. It's not totally bare knuckle in a sense. But I agree with you 100%. I think that it certainly sparks and piques people's interest a little bit, because it was really one of the sports, right, that it was legal. Oh, well, basketball didn't have it. Major League Baseball have a brawl once in a while, and most of those guys didn't want anything to do with it, with the brawl, right? They just want to go back to the dugout. But hockey had come out and it was accepted. It was accepted by public, by sportscasters, by everybody. And I think that's why there's a likely chance. I think people are going to kind of be reinvigorated by it a little bit.
100%, buddy. And I'll tell you right now, we're talking about, we're saying words like excitement and looking forward to and stuff like that. Buddy, you've been to a boxing event, I'm sure.
Yes.
I'm sure you've been to an MMA event. Now, when and the listeners can agree with me when they're hearing me explain this, when you go to one of those events, there's an energy in the air. There's an energy in the air. There's a buildup. You know that there's announcers, there's the ring girls. Everything is getting all exciting. And then the events happen, and it's all leading up to the main event. Ladies and gentlemen, we all get excited for that, bro. I'm telling you right now, I've competed in a similar tournament back in 2010. And I'm telling you right now, that excitement, that aura in the air, man, I'm telling you, it is at top level when it comes to competitions like this. Just imagine, we're all hockey guys. We love the boxing. We love the MMA. This is everything combined, ladies and gentlemen. 2 1-minute rounds, man, to a hockey fan, that is a treat and a half. I'm telling you.
I know it is.
You mentioned 30 seconds, Chris. I've been in fights that have been 10 or less.
And you're exhausted after 10 seconds.
Yeah.
Because it's more than just actual punching. There's an intensity that goes into it, right? There's almost a little bit of the first thing we did was making sure you don't get knocked out. So you're grabbing on to something right away. These guys don't have enough time because the prize money is the reward. So you can't go in there and try to tie a guy up for a minute. You're not going to get your points. So you got to go in there punching. That's where the excitement's going to come from. And you're right. You're right, Sheriff. I can't tell people enough, 1 minute round in this, there's 2 of them. Whew.
Yeah,
you got to be in some serious shape to chuck that long for 60 seconds. That's a lot.
Endurance is going to be very important. The mindset's going to be very important. All the fighters coming in are going to be well prepared. They're going to be training for this for weeks, months. Man, I can't wait to see the desire in their eyes. As a former competitor, I'll be able to tell which guys I think have a shot at winning King of the Ring. And man, I'm telling you, this is so exciting. If I was a hockey person, I'd be booking a trip to Enoch, Alberta right now, because
I tell all my buddies.
Guys.
I'm with you too, Sean. Like, you know what, dude? I tell like all my buddies back in Ottawa or wherever, they're like, I'm watching that. Like, whatever it is, I'm watching that. Didn't matter who was calling it. They're just like that. That's the kind of entertainment we want to see. And you know what's interesting too with AJ? You know, you talk about the story with AJ Galante and the Netflix special, which I found interesting. You go back, delve into it. Like his real hero is Vince McMahon, right? Yes. Who, in many ways, I mean, he's the greatest promoter of any sport of all time. But he's made it. And so I also find in this, yes, there's real punching, there's real bodies involved. There's also the entertainment part of it as well, where you kind of can build the characters up, you know, and have these kind of like Goliath type of characters. And that itself plays into it. These guys it's unique. It's a unique thing. There are a lot of more prize fighters putting the skates on with the prize fighting behind it.
Yes, and I'll say it again. If you are a hockey fan, if you like the rough stuff, if you like the big characters, this is the event for you. Now, yeah. Chris, is it Fight TV that the pay-per-view?
Yes, it's Fight. Yeah, it's Fight TV, and then there's a couple of them, but yes, it's Fight TV. So and again, it is a pay-per-view, May 21st in Edmonton. I know that, and it is. I know they're getting the times changing. They're going to start announcing the fighters, as we've been told by Charlie and AJ, in the next few days. So
One of the most exciting parts is the announcement of the fighters.
I've seen a couple of them. I'm not going to jump the gun on it, and they are like that. Like they're getting really chuck them. I could see a couple real good brawls coming out of this.
I can't wait to hear about the list. I only know about one guy so far because
I thought too, and I was like it looked like. I mean, it looked like a modern day Oglethorpe in a lot of ways. But again, that's a character that has transcended time. Like everybody still knows Ogie Oglethorpe from a 1975 movie with Paul Newman. So I mean, it's still out there, right? Like people still talk about it. It still comes around when there's a fight or something crazy happens, no matter what the league or level. There's still a buzz about it the next day. That's not an accident. It's not an accident that MMA events and boxing events are still sold out. People are intrigued by fighting sports, by combat sports, and by seeing who wants to win, you know, how far somebody will go for that. So we're going to have a great peek at it. I'm excited like you are about seeing the cast of characters because they themselves are the ones that are the ones selling it. You know, we're out there calling it, but it's those guys out there lending their hands and heads to the event that's going to make it special.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I really want to thank AJ Galante and Charlie Nama for putting this thing together, including us. And, you know, I know you are too. I'm a big fan of the sport and of hockey. So I just appreciate the fact that we're promoting the game and one of the unique special parts of the game, right?
100%. And you know, something that is probably become cyclical. Fighting has become cyclical in the NHL, especially the NHL, more so in the minors. You still get your tough guys. And, you know, I saw the Hershey Bears earlier this year. I was talking to them as a group, and I mean, they still have some really big, tough guys. One of them played for the Rangers before. His name eludes me right now, but there still exists. You know, the NHL, the same thing, but it's, you know, until somebody gets a star player that gets hit a little bit too hard, then they're like, well, you know, maybe it'd be good to have Zach McEwen, like here in Philadelphia, like they didn't have last year. So there's still a role for it. And I really feel like the more that happens, it kind of goes up. And then when someone says, well, we didn't win this year because we had too many tough guys in the lineup. And so then they change the formula again and they get more skill. And then the skill guy gets roughed up 3 years later. And then they decide they need another tough guy. So I think the tough guy in many ways, Sheriff, is never going to really ever truly leave the sport. But I think it's historically, it's such a part of the game that it sells with the sport of hockey. It's always run hand in hand.
Yes, 100%. And like, I'm looking forward to discussing more Ice Wars. I actually spoke to Lisa today, who's a contributor to Ice Wars International. Yep. She said that she spoke to you earlier. Yep. And, you know, it looks like we're going to be doing a little bit of spokesperson work for Ice Wars. I'm very excited about that. I know that you are. So I'm looking forward to talking more about it. We're learning more and more leading up to the event as well. So as the fighters' names come out, as they announce more rules, you know, me and you will be explaining that. And I can't wait to get on with that, man.
Yeah, and that'll be coming in the coming days. I mean, it's going to come. The event will come pretty fast and furious, you know, with about a month out. So, you know, we're going to hammer stuff out and keep an eye on our social media accounts and certainly. Twitter, I think it's called Ice is War.
Ice is War, yes.
Yeah, on Twitter.
Ice is War. I believe it's the same on Instagram as well. Yeah. Ice is War, and then it's Ice Wars International on Facebook, I believe.
That's correct. Yeah. So they're out there, and I'll keep pumping it out. So, but yeah, a lot of big announcements coming up, and I know they're trying to. We're getting the building getting sold out right now as we speak. It is a pay-per-view, really respectable number too, Sheriff. I love the $20. Just throw $20 on it. Wow. It's nothing for you to get 5, 6, 7 of your buddies over in a house on a Saturday night in May, weekend before Memorial Day, Victoria Day in Canada, and watch some guys really, really chuckle. Old school style.
That's incredible. Now, what's more incredible, Chris? I mean, and we'll get more into ice work, but what's more incredible I find is your journey, man. Your journey in hockey. I couldn't believe it when I was doing my research. Just the way that, just the path that you took. Now, I'm a guy that likes to go to the beginnings, especially with my big characters. I want to talk a little bit of Ottawa with Chris Therien. Yeah. I want to talk about Ottawa. Now, what part of the Ottawa area were you born in? Did you grow up in?
So I grew up in the Alta Vista area, which is close to like where the hospitals are. There's 3 hospitals there. And I was born at the Ottawa Civic Hospital. I was, born and raised in the Alta Vista area. My mom and dad still live there. So I get back up, when I can to see them. Ottawa's still home, will always be home. But yeah, I mean, I left Ottawa when I was 15 years old. I was one of those kids where just, the year before I left to go to Northwood. And what's ironic with Northwood is it's people like, oh, you went to a prep school in the US. It's actually funny. Jay Miller, who I know you know the name, and Chris Nyland went to Northwood.
That's right.
I mean, 2 of the toughest guys ever to play in the National Hockey League. Tony Granato went there. A lot of NHLers, kids go there now. Like former players that played in the league, they've sent their kids off to Northwood. I was like a pioneer. I was the only Canadian kid there at the time. I went in and like I said, I'd skied the year before for a whole year. So all the parents are like, well, no, how could that be? I did. I quit for a year. My dad said the next year, I'm going to get you out of the city of Ottawa. It was just, I don't know. It was one of those, a lot of politics involved. Anyway, It ended up being the best thing that ever happened to me in my life. And I went to Northwood. I grew. By my second year out of 3 there. I was, one of the better players. I had, and I got drafted. I mean, one of the best drafts in history of the league was 1990 with some of the players. Right. And I was picked 47th in that draft out of a small prep school at the time. And I went off to college. My dad was an American collegian. He went to St. Lawrence, and he always felt that was kind of the route that he wanted me to take. My dream at the time, Sean, was not really, I wasn't thinking about NHL. I was thinking about college, help my mom and dad, save some money through college and go on the same route my dad did. And, and I got in. I became a, good young hockey player. I went to the Olympic team in 1994. I played for Canada and Lillehammer, and shortly after went down to the minors. Right after that was my first exposure to minor hockey. And that's when the American League was like the East Coast League 15 years aago. Like it was like, man, there's some crazies down there. So I got introduced pretty quickly to the NHL. I started in 94. My first game was in, the lockout that year. And then from 1995 on through 2006, I played almost my entire career with the Flyers, except for a cup of coffee in Dallas towards the end. My life journey very much so, as good as it was in hockey, I had my, I had my falls as well. I became an alcoholic late in my career, which is now what I do, which is what my biggest, I call it my biggest correction in life, if you will, was getting myself, sober at the end of my journey of hockey. I had 4 beautiful kids, 3 girls and a boy, and there's just no way I wanted them to be exposed to an alcoholic father. So I decided to, I was blessed enough to have had an opportunity by the Flyers to broadcast radio and TV pre and post for 15 years, as well as a 12-year career here. So I was lucky people liked me. That changed in 2020 at the end. They made some changes and I fell through, I guess, with some of the pandemic and whatnot. But I thought I did a good job broadcasting. I was very straightforward, very honest in my approach to it. And as it went, when that ended in 2020, I really took a deep dive into my past, as a person, and who I was and what I wanted to do and what was really, truly meaningful to me, was my kids. That's what meant the most to me, and helping others, because I never forget the pain I was in. I have a great story. We'll share it over time. But it's certainly with my addiction of alcohol. Alcohol is my drug of choice. But I have 11 years now sober. I've never drank in my 40s.
Congratulations, buddy.
Yeah, no, and you know what? Thank you. But you know what? And I believe that anybody that has an issue with addiction of whatever kind it is, you can do this, because, you know, I did it. I got out of it. I found a path forward. So I'm very, very, I want to put a lot of positive energy into the recovery community. There's people suffering every single day. Mental health has become more prevalent too, Sheriff. Since the pandemic, it's hurt people. You know, it's really put people financially back on their heels. In society as well, people being locked down in their apartments for 2-3 months doesn't help. So these are things I'm trying to talk to people about and letting them know, like, really my biggest mission right now, what I do. I own a recovery center in Philadelphia. It's called Pennsylvania Recovery Centers, and we own it in the Fishtown area of Philadelphia. But my biggest goal now and what I do in my life is to destigmatize what addiction is. You know, like, you can live a life without it, but you don't have to feel like you're the biggest scumbag on the earth either. You know, these things happen to a lot of people, a lot of good people. And I want them to know that it's okay. And that if you have an issue with it, have the courage to ask for help. That's the hardest thing. I wish I would have done it earlier. I would have probably played 5 more years, you know, in the league. So, you know, those are the mistakes that I have to live with. And, you know, as part of that, but, you know, I come out at the end of it with hope, hope for people, hope for my kids, that they're going to be able to live a life and not hit those snags that I did. So, and that goes for anybody. You know, you don't have to have, life doesn't have to be a party. I've had a hell of a good time. I'm not going to lie about that. I had a hell of a good run. But that's over now. And I think, like in life, you know, your focus shifts sometimes to things that are really important. And, and, you know, I look at it too, Sean, in the same way, like, you know, getting an opportunity to do this show, right, with you. You know, if I were still actively drinking in my addiction, I wouldn't have that chance. So I take everything I have, you know, as a gift from God, and a gift for me staying sober one day at a time. And that's really what it's all about for me now.
Yes, Chris. And first off, I just want to thank you, because I want to thank you for your honesty. I want to thank you for your bravery. I want to thank you for what you've done in your life since you stopped playing, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, the limit, like, okay, so Limitless Recovery Center, is that still the name?
It's so actually great question. No, so we were Limitless. When I bought the business, we took it from someone else, took it over from someone else. We went through trials and errors. And then what we did was we partnered with another place, Pennsylvania Recovery Centers. I have a very small percent down there. And it's an aftercare facility. I also do stuff for Therien Recovery Center, which is in Wernersville, Pennsylvania. They're one of the biggest and one of the best rehabs in the entire world, to be honest with you. So I'm fortunate to have a place to send people that I know is full of love and help, you know, and try to get them back on the path. When I have somebody come in and I deal with them, or I talk to somebody with addiction, my goal is to never see them again unless they become a lifelong friend. Like, get cured and go on and live your life, because that's the way it is. I don't want to see you. If I see you again, it means that you're coming back to me, and I just don't want to deal with that, because I want to get you healthy the first time and get you living again. So I've been fortunate to have a lot of these places. Yeah. So Limitless no longer exists. We are now Pennsylvania Recovery Centers, Fishtown and Phoenixville, which are both in PA, Pennsylvania.
And that's absolutely perfect.
It's right? Great. And then I'm able to have a great relationship with Therien Recovery as well. So yeah, I mean, you have to have your I's dotted and your T's crossed in terms of this business, because it's got to be fast and furious. People need help and they need it quickly. And a lot of the time it's a family member that's calling to try to get these people help. It's never the addict themselves. They don't want to help themselves until they realize what they've done. So, you know, again, that's part of the journey, but it's grateful. I'm truly grateful to be allowed to do this. And I'm humbled by it every single day, because I'm alive. I'm here. I get up and I have a chance to smile every single day, and I get to go call Ice Wars with you.
That's it, Chris.
Doesn't get any better.
So now this is why I feel what you're doing is so important, buddy. Most professional athletes, Chris, okay, so, and we've seen this so much throughout the years, they play their career, if it's 5 years, 10 years, 12 years, whatever it is. They're used to the hype. They're used to intensity. They're used to thousands of people watching them and yelling their names, and they're used to that feeling. And then it's over. So unless that player finds something that's similar, productive, and exciting to what they were doing, they tend to find that in drugs and alcohol to get that rush, to get that feeling. They can't get anywhere else. They've had it for the past 10 years. What do I do? Well, when I pound shots, I get that feeling. When I do a hit, I get that feeling, right? And that's what has seen with so many of my ex-teammates, so many people that I grew up with that played professionally.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? So
yeah.
to change that, what you're doing, it saves people's lives, man.
It does, but there's another level to that, is the prevention part. Like, why get to that point? You don't have to get to where I got to or where those guys do get to. I mean, I talk to the NHL. You know, I know about the issues with players trying to get themselves back on track, or they find themselves derailed. The problem is, and I think you mentioned all those things, the biggest thing in them all is when you're done playing, right? You're just not happy. You lose your 20 buddies. Like away, they're gone. And that's the worst part, getting up in the morning, because you can't just go in the back door of the rink anymore. You're not part of the team.
Yep.
So that's the part, I think, where guys are like, oh my God, this is totally different. And I'm here hanging out with my wife all day. And, you know, I'm just saying, I'm not making light of it, but it's not it's not the path that you've been put on for all these years. So things are so shockingly different that it can take you and it can derail you. And I think that's part of the stuff where there's got to be more of a prevention, but there's also got to be a path forward for guys to have something to do. I was blessed. I was a broadcaster. You know, I never shut my mouth the whole time I played. They figured, well, just put him in a broadcast booth. I mean, it'd be perfect. No, it worked out for me, but I say that, you know, like I was lucky, but there's guys that don't have an opportunity like that, you know? And so I think there has to be more progressive thinking in that, especially for players' futures, because, you know, you can have a wonderful 10-year career or 8-year career. But if you don't have something ready and waiting for you when you're done your journey in hockey, you can find yourself on a really bumpy road. And I think that's the biggest issue that guys are having.
I agree with that. And the prevention part, Chris, is very important. So I'm really glad that you pointed that out. And man, I'm just happy that you're doing this, because I know how many people you're helping. It's limitless, right? Like it's incredible.
There's limitless people, and there's a lot. You know, there's people out there you don't even know. You'd never know had a problem, and you're like, wow. So yeah, everybody's got something of some kind that bothers them. Maybe it doesn't always lead down that dark path. But the more you can shower people with love and affection in this world and give them an easier road to ride on, I think that's the way people were going to respond to it. You know, not everybody has to go down the path that I was down. I consider myself blessed, but you know what? There's a part to this that guys need to have a shot, and sometimes not all the money in the world can change that. You know, a guy can have as much money as you want, but if you don't have a certain base built up in your head mentally, you can run yourself into a lot of problems. And I think I think the league in a lot of ways, and the leagues in general, are starting to wake up to that a little bit more, and understanding that, yeah, this is good. Yeah, we use these guys for what we're doing, but there is a real personal story from a lot of these players at the end of their athletic journey, and it's not always roses afterwards. So there's a reality to it.
Definitely, Chris. And I want to get into your family before we go, but just before that, I also wanted to point out the fact that 10 years ago, Chris, it would be embarrassing to admit that you were an addict, that you were an alcoholic, that you had mental health issues. But now it's different. Now there's support. Mr. Carey Price, we saw as an example of that in the beginning of the season when the Canadians first mentioned, the announcement at first was he's out with a non-COVID sickness, right? Because everyone would just assume it was COVID at that time, right? Yeah. And then there was the announcement of what it was. And I just remember seeing post after post, this after this, of all the support. Carey Price, thank you for standing up and do this and that, and asking for help. And like, people understand now. This seems to be a big support system in society now.
More so than there was. I mean, there's stories you can go back into the 80s where like a general manager would go into an arbitration hearing and tell the judge that his player drank too much. He didn't want to pay him. So, I mean, yeah. So we've come a long way, and you know, for that. But you know what? You're right. I mean, there's a lot of different. You're right, and that's part of destigmatizing it. You know, like the people have, and I think the part, Sheriff, is that a lot of people, I think, when you hear something like that, instead of going and looking at yourself in the mirror and saying, "Oh, well, to hell with these people. They got something wrong with them." I think most people look themselves in the mirror and go, geez, I have my own problems. And I think when you're honest about it, so I think that's where a lot of the destigmatizing of these addictions is starting to go downhill, because people realize, like, Molly, shit, there's a lot of problems in the world. People have a lot of issues, and it doesn't matter if you have money or not. There's people that have issues all over the place. And so I think that that's where you have to have the courage to say it. I'm not afraid to say anymore, hey, I'm Chris and I'm an alcoholic. One of the greatest and one of the worst of all time. But that's me. That's my life. That's who I am. And it's what I do now, and luckily when I go back into my time, I didn't do too much damage, but I did enough. If I would have kept it going, it would have been really significant. So like I said, John, I'm a lucky one. But I do believe that anybody else can be as lucky as I am if you put your mind to doing it and getting yourself out of that dark corner.
Yes. And again, like Bundy, I want to thank you and congratulate you just on the work that you're doing with this, because it's so important, brother, especially now. And we were talking before the recording about what the pandemic has done to society and how there's record numbers of people, being depressed and anxiety and suicide.
Suicides are higher than they've been.
Alcohol abuse,
sales, yep.
Right? And it's terrible.
And no, you're right. So those are things alcohol sales are up over 225% since March of 2020. That's insanity. That's people sitting in their house drinking all day. I know people that have turned to a really bad way over the last 2 years. So I'm not just saying it's this, but people have issues in life, and we don't know about them all the time. And so I'm vigilant on that. I'm understanding, and I want people to say, if there's a social media platform or something that if you got a problem, text me. I may not be able to solve the problem, but I can at least point you in the right direction. And I think that's really where my charity comes into it, is to just let you know, you don't have to ever feel like you feel again if you're in the throes of addiction. And I mean that, because I've been out of it. Like I said, 11 years I put down my last drink. And since that day, I've received nothing but rewards for that.
That's great, buddy. Congratulations.
It's a life story. It is. And then, you know what? It's one of hope. Like I said, I want everyone else to have the same hope. Not everybody's the same person. A lot of people just have lives that they go on and they live and they don't have issues. Some people are blessed like that. But I think for the most, I just want people to know, hey, I got your back. If that's what it takes, I'll be there for you. I had somebody there for me. And
that's right. And that's how she goes, man. That's incredible. Now, Chris, we do have a base of listeners in the United States. Mm-hmm. I'm sure there's many in Pennsylvania and New Jersey area. How would one get a hold of your program?
Well, you know what? So you can go to Pennsylvania, PARecoverycenters.com. You can get me on my social media, any of my social media, like Chris Therien and Facebook.
I love
Twitter.
Your social media.
Yeah, at Therien6. Yeah, I'm pretty straight up about a lot. I do a lot of bit of Flyers coverage as well. I do a podcast, which we're going to have you on, and we're going to hype up the Ice Wars in a couple of weeks as we approach the event. But yeah, that would be the best way. Instagram, Chris Therien, Therien6 on Twitter, and PARecoverycenters.com. That'd be the best ones. But there are people and a lot of it too. We have relationships with a lot of the bigger facilities. Ours is an aftercare. So I say that. So when you come after, when you go to a rehab for 30 days and someone spent upteen amount of money to get you in there and get you treated, to me, that's wonderful. You're safe in there. But when you got to go out and live on the street again, you're going to be out and you're going to drive by a liquor store. You might drive by somewhere where your dealer was before. That's the reality of it. So how do you live like that? And that's where the aftercare is, say that I could put my foot on the pavement again and not worry about these distractions that were once part of it. So that's where it is. I appreciate you asking me, Sean. There's a lot of people that need help, but you can get me in any one of my social media and just inbox me. I'll get a hold of it within a couple of days.
That's incredible, buddy. Before we go, I got to get into your family a little bit, man. Yeah. We got this all-star family of yours. So I want to talk about your daughters first. Is that okay? Yeah. All right. Yeah. So the first one I want to talk about is Isabella.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, Isabella, correct me if I'm wrong. Is it basketball and hockey or just basketball?
All three girls were basketball.
Okay.
It was not by design. And it's one of those great stories. I wish I could tell hockey parents the same thing, Sheriff, because when this little girl was 10 years old, now my daughters are bigger girls. They're not, I don't see me big. They're just tall. They're athletic builds. One of them, all of them are at least 6 feet tall.
Okay. My sister's 5'11", my mom's 6 foot. So I hear you, man.
So
I feel
actually, I should correct that. My middle daughter's 5'11" and a half. So anyway, Isabella was a 10-year-old, and there was a league here in New Jersey. And she said, "Let me try her out in basketball." I brought her out on a Friday night, and it was like watching Michael Jordan. I mean, I was like, "What is this?" You talk about just a natural, like just putting the ball, shooting threes like it was nothing. And so anyway, she ended up playing on one of the better AAU teams, and then went on to a school, Loyola Maryland, Division I school. They're in the Patriot League. Her younger sister Ava was an AAU player, 2 years younger. She followed her there. And my third daughter, which is the most interesting of the bunch, a great player in her own right. She was committed to Boston University. They changed coaches, and she didn't like the new one. Didn't like the new one coming in. She just was more excited about the old coach. So she transferred to Loyola before she even went to Boston University. And she ended up this year. They didn't win a lot, but she ended up being the rookie of the year for half the country. Wow. I think there was 11 leagues involved. Like the ACC had some schools, SEC had a couple on the coastern stuff. So she's a special player, just a really hard. She's a hockey player on skates. That's what every one of the guys that watches my kids says about my girls. They're like hockey players on skates.
On the court, yeah.
They play hard. They compete hard. They're good teammates. They're hockey players on a basketball court. And then my son's a 15-year-old, 6'5". He's a football player. Yeah, he's too big to play hockey anymore, Sheriff, unless he's out there. I might have him in Ice Wars in about 6 or 7 years. But you know what? He's a football player. So, but yeah, I have just remarkable kids. And when I say that, they weren't because I always say it was because myself or Diana, my wife was big, tall woman. It's because they had a chance to flourish because they didn't have that drunk Dennis Hopper dad in the basketball gym. From Hoosiers, and I mean that sincerely. So they were allowed to spread their wings, and that's what I always say. Every child deserves that opportunity to be loved and feel comfortable in their own home, and that's what I like to think my greatest achievement is in my life, to give those kids that opportunity.
Yeah, man, that's just such a beautiful thing. I really appreciated that information, man. It's making me smile a lot.
We'll talk a lot more. We're going to be together a lot.
Of course, Chris. No, just before we go, I just wanted to add to that a little bit. So, like, how happy and proud does it make you feel when you see your own children being competitive like that, being like battling? Like, we know that these assets, that we use them later in life. Like, you know what I mean? Like, people don't realize that. All those years you playing hockey, you battling every day, the competition, the hunger, like that's all training for the future, for future gigs. Like, and you're seeing that in your own kids. Doesn't that make you excited, buddy?
It does, because, you know, and they're on, they play honest. They play fair. Like I did too. I played hard, but it was fair.
Very hard.
Yeah. And so my kids, I think, do the same. And, you know, I know their mom taught them a lot too. It wasn't just me, but when you play, I just told them, I said, you know what, guys, whatever you do when you're out there, be a good teammate. Work your ass off no matter what. And if there's a 50-50 ball in the rebound, you better win it. That's kind of it, right? Like, those are the rebounds. So and that's to me the most honest thing I can say is just, just if you're going to do something, do it 110% no matter what it is, and that's kind of the way I've lived my life. And you know what? I live my life like that drinking. I live my life like that playing hockey, being a dad. I also live my life like that in recovery. And unfortunately, I don't have like a middle gear. It's either all or nothing. And most of the time it's been cranked up high. It's nice to be able to kind of, to take that down a notch, pass it on to my kids, and then see them working that hard. That's what I'm most proud of, the effort they put in, not the results, the effort. And so I know that we've done the right thing when I see that.
Yeah, dude, I'm just loving this so much. I love it. I realized that gaining those skills, how important it was. I didn't realize it till after I was done playing. And I'd sit back and be like, man, so all this time is I was building towards this. And now I understand. And your kids are going to realize the same thing. And it's a beautiful thing. And Bundy, I really appreciate this, buddy. I know it was short notice, you coming on here, man, and we nailed it. I had such a good time with you in the show, buddy.
We built some great chemistry here, which is awesome. And I know, like I said to Charlie, I said, I'm going to want to talk with AJ and Sean, like get right in with you guys. So I know your personalities. I know your big personalities. I know that already. You're hockey players. You guys were scrappers. but me coming in as part of it too. I haven't been around the league a long time. I know a lot of the characters. I'm really, really looking forward to this. I'm super excited. We're going to have fun, if nothing else. And that's truly what I'm most looking forward to. It's going to be a great, big, grand event. We're going to do a great job with it. I know the promotions are going to be amazing. It's going to be unique. Tune in May 21st. It is going to be actually a 9:00 Eastern start. I did get that updated. 7 o'clock in Edmonton.
And that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It does. That's kind of what the other ones do. So
6 o'clock on the West Coast.
7 o'clock on the
Edmonton.
West Coast. Yeah, 9:00 East Coast, right? Yeah. At the casino. Yeah. So, and they're again, people see a lot more stuff coming out in the next probably 10 days, 2 weeks, all the way up to the event. And we want to knock it out of the park on the first one so we can get ourselves a second and third one in Toronto and Montreal.
That's right, buddy. That's it. Ice Wars International, ladies and gentlemen. So I want to thank the listeners for tuning in to another episode of The Sheriff, featuring special guest Chris Therien, aka Bundy, the all-time Philadelphia Flyers games played leader, ladies and gentlemen, for defensemen. I want to thank you for coming on. And ladies and gentlemen, we're going to sign off right now. Woo!